Build your dream home with confidence. The BuildMasters podcast delivers expert interviews and real answers to simplify your toughest decisions. Each episode equips you with insider knowledge and actionable tips. Subscribe today to learn the art of building from the true masters with BuildMasters.
So last year, my family and I had the most awesome opportunity to build our own house. We were the GCs on this build. We had so many questions though along the way. I mean, from contracts, planning, foundations, all the way to final inspection, dealing with subs. I realized at that moment that my dad was my lifeline. He has over 40 years of industry knowledge, and I am super excited because we sat down with him, interviewed him for over 2 hours to really understand the finer points of building, what to look for, tips and tricks, expert advice along the way. I also realized at that point that not everybody has a father like mine that they can just call. So we compiled all of that into the BuildMasters podcast. This podcast gives you expert interviews, extremely good knowledge, so that you can feel confident about building your own house or working with a GC or other subs to make it happen for you. So stay tuned. We got a lot of great content coming, and we are super excited to share it with you. So we're going to talk about liens and how that works. And
when basically any good contractor, subcontractor, usually the contractor will do it and also the subcontractors will do it. They'll put in place a prelim, which is called a pre-lien. And what that is that's notifying you, say a sub orders stuff from a lumber company or a supply house. Supply house wants to make sure they get paid, okay? So you'll not only maybe you'll get a prelim from the general contractor that he's on the job and they're doing work. You'll get a prelim from the subcontractor saying that they want to get paid, okay? And then you might get prelims from a number of different suppliers that the framer or the roofer or the plumber used. They might have used 3 different suppliers, and you might get 3 different prelim from those suppliers because they want to make sure they get paid. And the whole idea is that you're notified as the owner that these guys are buying stuff from these different places and they need to pay those people.
Which is actually a good thing because you know that they're not running off with your money because they're actually buying stuff. Right.
Because otherwise that guy can put a lien against your house. The supplier can put a lien against your house for not getting paid. So before you pay the general contractor, or if you're paying general contractor yourself, before you pay the subcontractor, you got all these prelims. You need to make a book. You got a prelim from, the lumber company, from the nut and bolt company for bolting up beams, and from the trucking company or something like that. So you need to make sure that all 3 of those guys got paid before you pay that, or you pay it when he hands you basically. Is
that your lien release?
That's your lien release, and usually it's a partial lien release. Mm-hmm. If the job's still going on, it's
so you have the partial lien release. I had a lot of those.
You have a partial lien release from this guy, and this guy, and from the sub.
Which your bank will require anyway. If you have a loan, they're going to have that.
So you have all those in place every time you write a check to somebody. That way, when you go to the bank to cover your loan, the bank goes, well, where's all those prelim releases? And so then you've got them in a book, and you can
that way nobody's screwed in the end, essentially.
You can make a copy. And so then when it's all over and done, before you write the final check, you get a final lien release from all those different people. In other words, the sub has to go and get it from the trucking company, the bolt company, and the lumber company, and give you a final lien release. And that means he has to pay them for them to give them, so that he's paid them. Now you have to pay that subcontractor.
Now, a lien itself is only the time you sell your home or the time you actually do a bank loan, or let's just say they put a lien on your house, right?
Right.
Well, let's just say you never sell your house. Or how does that work? Or do they go to court because
they can go to court.
Okay.
They can go to court to enforce the lien. That's possible too, depending on how much it is. I mean, some guys won't go to court for $500, and some people will. But you don't want liens on, because as soon as you that's another thing too. That's a whole other topic.
We can discuss more. Yeah.
If you start to build your house and you haven't got your loan, and you've hired your concrete guy and your plumber, and they've already got concrete in the ground, and the plumber's already got some waste in the ground, and you go to get your loan,
Which is what we did.
The loan company, the mortgage company, requires you to get lien releases from everybody that's already done work on the job before they'll fund the loan.
Yes.
Because they want to make sure there's no pre-liens
Before they got involved. Which is what we did, and it worked out fine because everybody signed theirs and they were good to go.
So that's a lot of times you want to get your loan in place before anybody walks on the job. You know, it makes it simpler that way.
Okay.
But then all you're doing with the prelims and the lien releases and the partial lien releases is just covering your butt that everybody gets paid and nobody's going to put a lien against your job when it's done. That's the whole idea. And it sounds complicated, but it's not. It's real logical. And
should homeowners or soon-to-be homeowners, if they hire a GC, for example, should they be hiring a lawyer to review the contract? If they don't know what they're like, if I didn't have you to review a contract, for example, with a GC, should they hire a real estate attorney or something like that to look it over and be like, yes, this is a good contract, or no, this is absolutely going to screw you in the event that they happen?
Actually, if you have a good banker that you're working with, you could go to the banker.
Because they see it a lot?
They see it an awful lot.
Okay.
So you could go to the banker and he could help you out.
Okay.
So, and then if it's a little bit more complicated, then he would probably have somebody he could refer you to.
But it'd be $500 well spent.
Oh, yeah.
To have somebody
review it. Could save you thousands in the end.
Yeah, or save you a job that never gets done, or who knows.
That's right. I mean, every contract is basically how much, what you're going to do, how long it's going to take.
And it seems like the only time people get screwed is when they assume too much. They assume somebody's going to do too much, and it's not documented or it's not scoped.
Right.
Or they assume people are going to be either more friendly, nicer, or more honest than they actually are. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay.
So it's basically just, it's not complicated. It has to do with what you want built. Is it detailed enough that the guy knows what you want to have built? If it's detailed enough, then there can be no arguments about what you want to be built. How much he's going to get paid and how long it's going to take. That's the whole basics to the contract. And if they don't finish, what's your recourse?
And if they're not willing to do that or spell that out or all of that,
then you don't
elsewhere.
Need them. You don't need them.
Because they're not going to fulfill or
nope.
Or they're not confident enough in themselves, therefore they would never sign up for it.
Right.
Anyway.
And very seldom would I get a contractor architect type thing. In other words, where they provide the plans and they usually want two separate people.
Gotcha.
You want the contractor doing his job and you want an architect, designer, or whoever doing their job so they can be checked back and forth. If you have the same company doing the design and the build, which is the design build, it makes the job go faster, but it also can put you out on a limb because they said, oh, no, it was in the plans and you didn't catch it. And Well,
it was their own plans.
It was their own plans. So.
There's nobody checking. Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Elevate your home with Glass House. Don't settle for ordinary. Our stunning bifold and multi-slide glass doors transform any setting into a luxurious retreat. Take advantage of 50% off retail prices for unmatched value. Try our exclusive online pricing calculator for an instant estimate in seconds. Quick, easy, with no strings attached. Step into sophistication without compromise. Choose Glass House for an unparalleled customer experience at a fraction of the price.
This comes up a lot, and this is going to be our last topic. So this topic is all about how do you be respectful yet forceful with a contractor and not piss them off, which I know I pissed off some of mine, but at the same time, I think I pissed them off because I actually knew what I was talking about because I had you to consult with, and they didn't like that. Like, they were used to people just agreeing with what they said.
Okay, well, what pissed them off? What came up that pissed them off?
Okay, so for example, with my concrete, right? When it snowed and the radiant floor was in place, right? And they were going to go pour and things. I say, how are you guys going to clear off the snow? And he said, shovels, right? And it took me forever to get that answer. Like, what's the plan here? And I honestly didn't know if he was just going to pour over the snow. I have no idea, right? Mm-hmm. He said shovels, and I was like, well, then I'll have a guy come and like blow it off, right? The guy with the landscape crew come and like blow it off because it was brand new snow. Oh, he got so angry with me, right? Because he said, no, we're going to do it. And I was like, So I was a radiant floor guy, right? I didn't want my work to be ruined, because if you break that under the concrete, that's like, you're totally screwed. And having a bunch of shovels around that kind of stuff didn't sit well with me. So instead of him saying, hey, we're going to do shovels, we're going to do these other options, right? And they were going to blow some of it off and do some other things and heat it up a little bit, melt it. He didn't say that at all. So when he just said shovels, I was like, okay, well, I have to take this into my own hands, because I'm not going to let you guys just do a bunch of shovels around my radiant floor. And that totally pissed him off, and he called me yelling at me. And I was like, well, then say what you're going to do. But don't make me assume that you're just going to hit all, because I assume right away you're going to destroy all of my work. Because that's pretty much, I felt like, what every sub did, but they just...
Well, here's what I would have said. I said, well, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to help blow it off, and you guys can get out there with shovels in the areas that I blow it to. That way it's a cooperative.
Well, I couldn't be there. I'd work. But I said, hey, I'm going to get a guy to come out and blow. And that's what was so angry with me. Versus, to me, if you would have been a good contractor, you would have been like, fantastic. You're going to pay for somebody else to blow it off?
That's what I'm saying. I don't understand his
Why not?
I don't understand his reaction.
You don't trust me. That was the idea.
No. I said, it's just, number one, it'd be easier and cleaner, and it's less damage.
Yeah,
so
exactly. That's what I thought.
So if he didn't, then there was something wrong with him in terms of not knowing the right way to do it. That's a small town concrete guy that's got an ego. So
yeah. Okay. So then that's, I guess, the biggest question. How do you not piss off your subs, or not piss off your contractor when you do have questions, when you do want to follow up, when you do question something that they did that you don't think is right, or that you think should be fixed, but you're not 100% sure?
That's a good question, because it's usually when I didn't like something, it got fixed. So,
well, what about with you? When you had a client, granted a lot of commercial work, but you did do quite a few homes. When you had a client who was asking you a question because they didn't maybe even understand. Like a question comes up around mold on wood, right? Because wood sits out, it gets rained on, right? There's a little bit of surface mold or whatever. Those types of questions come up all the time. So there's some that are totally insignificant, and there's other ones where you broke a truss and you tried to fix it, but it doesn't look correct, right? So maybe you should probably fix that, right?
Well, basically what we do is, like, for our end of it, it had to do with, well, also for the trusses, for you, if there's a break, you have somebody, an engineer, that tells you how to do it, how to fix it. If it's something minor, like stuff sitting out in the rain, I mean, if it's going to mold, you've got to treat it. And so, I mean, that's a very interesting question, because I never had things where it never got to the point where we had to argue about it.
I think it's because you were on top of it so much, you paid attention to the details, and I think a lot of people don't care. They don't care to pay attention to the details.
Yeah, we never had to fix things that was so totally out of hand that it was a problem.
Or they overscheduled themselves, so they're not on site for a long period of time, and then that material's sitting there too long.
Well, overscheduling themselves, it came down to their contract. And for me, it was, we did pretty tight schedules in terms of, it was printed out on computer paper, or on back then, but now it's on your computer, on a program. But here's your schedule. This is when you're due in there. And it was on their contract. You're due at such a certain time. After this guy gets done, then you're in at this time. So if they weren't there, then it was, okay, well, I'm going to go hire somebody to finish. And then whatever it takes, it comes out of your contract. That really pisses them off, but it also motivates them. All right. So if you say,
show up on time, get done.
I've got to get it done. If you can't be here, I've got to get somebody else in here. So whatever it costs them to do, I'm going to deduct it off your contract. And it's perfect if they've already spent money. If they've already got
stuff on
money on site or in it, then it clicks. If they don't have any skin in the game, they don't care.
But just like, for example, with Beto, right? There was one tile, happened to be right there. I noticed a pretty big void underneath it. So I pulled up one tile. This is $13,000 worth of flooring. And I pulled it up and I checked it and I scraped it off to make sure I didn't mess up. I scraped off the area, so it wasn't like, a bunch of dried mortar or thin set when they came back. And he noticed it, and it bothered him so much. And I was like, hey, I was just checking. I mean, it's my money. I get to check. There's no GC on site, so I'm checking to see, like, did you actually put full coverage, or are there giant voids? Because if there's giant voids, because my floor was not flat, right, unfortunately.
Well, you can tap that.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, so it was brand new, and I just wanted to check. And I don't think that there's any harm in that. But at the same time, it is your money, and if you're the person inspecting, right, and there's nobody else following up.
The problem is if you're not on the job site enough, then you can't watch it, and so you don't know what they're doing. For us, we always had a super or me on the job sites, so we could catch it that was happening
almost immediately.
So that kind of is a dilemma, because then it's like trusting your subs And
But for example, as the GC, if you were to walk in and see some tile guys doing something, say, pull up one tile, I want to see what the coverage is.
well, while they're there, they have to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, once they're gone, I can understand that it kind of pisses them off a little bit. But if you're there and I just want to check it, there's no reason why you can't check it. You know, you're questioning their honesty.
Yeah.
But the same token, it's called quality control.
Quality control. To me, that's like every manufacturer.
It comes back to schedule, money, quality control,
and the contract.
Well,
because in their world, if it's done poorly and they have to come back and fix it, you'd rather catch it now anyway.
And contracts mean it has to be done to standards.
Yeah.
You know, and the standard is you don't have a void.
Yeah.
Underneath it. So.
90 whatever % coverage that they say it has to happen.
Yep.
All right. Well, very cool. Anything else?
I mean, it shouldn't piss them off if they've done it right. It shouldn't piss them off. If they did it wrong, then they should get pissed off because you're catching them.
I think honestly, the reason why my people got frustrated was, number one, I had much more educated questions and asked a lot more because of you, right? Because you might say, "Hey, how are they going to do that?" And I would ask them that question, and then they'd be like, "Well, you don't trust me, right?" But honestly, I didn't trust a whole lot of people because I honestly had never worked with them. So how do I know how to trust them, right? And then number two is because I was the insulation guy and I was the window guy and I was the radiant floor heat guy and stuff, I was also coordinating for myself as the GC plus doing all those jobs. And therefore I was trying to make sure that they didn't mess up those jobs. And I would have to say, "Hey, when can I get in to do the next thing?" So I was coordinating. So I have to be over communicating because I was the one doing
a good
work.
example was really weird is the original plumber when you guys were getting ready to pour stems and you want to put blockouts in the stem for the plumber so you wouldn't have to do a bunch of chipping to chip out where he's going to bring his plumbing up out of the soil into the wall, and he got pissed off because you wanted him to come show you where you wanted to put some blockouts out in for him. You were going to put the blockouts in so he wouldn't have such a hard job later, and he got mad and didn't even show up on the job site.
Yep.
That means he's not a good plumber. All right.
So conflict avoided in that case.
Yeah, because I mean, if he doesn't even want to cooperate the first day he's going to be on the job, what's the use of happening?
Yeah, that's true.
So
basically pay attention to red flags up front.
There's always going to be a red flag.
Or take what you can get if you're in my case, because you can only get so many people.
Problem with the mountains is communication. Down here, it's manpower.
Yeah, too many jobs.
Up there, they ignore you because they're going hunting. Down here, you can't get enough men to man the job.
Gotcha. All right. So in the end, what would you say is like the number one thing that people should pay attention to or think about before they build and during the build?
The number one thing, I think, get the most bang for your buck and make sure it's done right. Anybody can throw up something, but it's kind of like the saying now in New York and all those places. If you see something, if you see something, do something or say something. All right. If you see something that doesn't look right, it's not right. I mean, you might not have the best eye for it,
or might not have the full knowledge,
but you can sure find out real quick. And just looking at something, if it doesn't look right, question it.
And if they get pissed off by it, then maybe you should even be more questioning.
Well, just say, I don't want to make you mad, but
I'd like to learn.
I'm kind of a novice, but are you sure that looks right? Something's wrong there. What do you think it is? And if you kind of play like
I'd like to learn
type thing, they might catch it and say, maybe we should have done it this way.
Yeah. Or if it's the owner of the company who wasn't there,
right?
Say, hey, yeah, you're right.
The owner of the companies always want to make sure it's done right because they want the next job. The guys working for them, whatever.
Well, and the problem is doing your own GC. You're probably only doing this as your only job, so they don't necessarily want the best job, but they might want a referral to somebody. Like, hey, you got to get a referral. So
I mean, we even had things where I'd have a plumber on a job that had too much of a plumber's crack. And it was on a house, and the people were there a lot. And it's like, I finally had to call and say, "Can you have the guy wear a belt?" So, it comes down to some really basic things sometimes too.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate it. We're going to do a few more of these, and I think maybe there's some things that you could elaborate on that we only got to touch on. Okay. But I want to pick your brain and get all the plethora of knowledge so that we can all learn from that. So I appreciated all of your help with my build. I could have done it without you.
You better do it before I forget it all. So.
I know, right? All right, thanks, Dad.
You bet.
Thanks for tuning in. Hit subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Be sure to explore Glass House's exclusive online pricing calculator for instant estimates on gorgeous bifold and multi-slide glass doors. Find the link in the description or visit glasshouse.co. That's glass-haus.co. Until next time.